Welcome, team players. This is Local Football Flavor, continuing to break down the first round of the NFL Draft. For disclosure, we are filming this the Friday before the second round has started. We have already covered picks 1 through 12 in our previous 2 episodes, so please check those out. Today's episode is going to be picks numbers 13 through 18. Starts with the Green Bay Packers, once again not drafting an offensive skill player, taking the edge rusher from Iowa, Van Ness. The Steelers take Jones from Georgia, offensive tackle. The Jets, who wanted Jones and didn't really hide that fact, end up taking the Cyclones edge rusher, McDonald. The Washington Commanders take Emmanuel Forbes over Christian Gonzalez, who went to the New England Patriots with the very next pick. And then the Detroit Lions take number 18, the first middle linebacker of the draft, in Jack Campbell, who won the Defensive Lineman of the Year last year. So, Bob, any glaring you did it wrongs in this section?
Absolutely. This section is it feels like a fantasy draft sometimes where somebody just they go, I like this guy, but another guy goes ahead of me. I got to pick a guy, so I'm going to pick this guy. And this is especially true for the Jets. Very questionable decision. It is not often. I mean, I know they have Breece Hall from Iowa State as well, but what is this pick? I mean, to me, the Jets didn't need this. I mean, they had a fairly decent defense last year. And for them,
very good defense last year.
And they just got Aaron Rodgers, and they just have, they have McCole Hardman. Their team is relatively set to a degree. But one of the things that you cannot go wrong with, and we've said it over and over again, is cornerback. It would have been a really good decision right here for the Jets to take cornerback. Now, if we're just judging the player, I don't even think it's the right player for the position that they're looking at either, because, I mean, granted, okay, any edge rusher, any outside linebacker could be eventually good at something. But Iowa State is not the place I go to see this. And to have 3 Iowa players, or 3 people from Iowa drafted in this part of the draft, was just really confusing to me as a viewer. It is not often we see that. Now, I don't want to dig on the Jets for too long, but the other pick that I don't like is the Commanders. Emmanuel Forbes, too skinny. It does not fit what I want out of a first-round cornerback, especially when you have a much better cornerback available to you to select.
Christian Gonzalez was the best corner in the draft, and he fell to 17. And so I'm assuming there's something going on behind the scenes that we'll never know about with Gonzalez, because he should have gone number 5.
I'm just going to read some of this ESPN analysis before the draft. Forbes is tall, toothpick thin, long arms, excellent speed. He's best off coverage. He lacks bulk and strength to show up in run support.
Well,
so you're telling me
getting bigger is one thing you can do. You can't get taller. Most people don't get that much faster, but you can get bigger. It's one of the flaws you can't fix.
That a team in the Commanders that has had arguably one of the most disappointing defenses year after year after year goes and selects a cornerback that is skinny, that is fast, but won't support you in the run, and prefers to play off coverage.
Oh, it's not like they're in a division with 2 of the best running teams or anything.
This is what I'm saying. It makes absolutely 0 sense to take a pick like that. Then I just can't see when you say, okay, I'm drafting. Where did he go? Like, what was it, 16? And the analysis goes, he's a plug-and-play starter. Are you serious? You take
he is because he's a Redskin.
Yeah, but you take a plug-and-play starter, 16th overall when you had an every down cornerback available to you?
Yeah. No,
Why?
I mean, the bottom line is Christian Gonzalez had to have something going on behind the scenes, or else he would have gone 5th. Christian Gonzalez is by far the most talented corner in this draft.
He also wouldn't have been picked by Bill Belichick if anything was going on behind the scenes either.
Well, this is where I love the Steelers trade with Belichick, because the Steelers did trade up to 14. And I guarantee part of that conversation was, who are you taking? Because without a doubt, the Jets wanted Jones. There was no hiding that fact at all. And the fact that the Patriots simultaneously got extra assets from the Pittsburgh Steelers and screwed over the New York Jets has to be like the happiest thing that Bill Belichick does every single day. He probably wakes up in the morning every single day and goes, how can I piss off the Jets? It seems like his lifestyle motto. It's a pretty good one. And he did it again last night. And obviously, Jones, to me, is the one with the highest upside of all the tackles in the draft, but he also has a lower starting floor. And that's why he was taken 3rd out of the tackles. So when I look at this, you know, as the Steelers were on the clock, I thought they were going Gonzalez. I wanted them to go Gonzalez. But obviously, they didn't go. They took Jones. To me, that was the kind of like the first real surprise of the draft, knowing how much they needed a corner. Despite the fact they drafted Peterson, or correction, signed Peterson, they don't really have a long-term solution. And Gonzalez is a guy you can build a franchise around in terms of the talent there. He's certainly more talented than Forbes, which just points to the fact that I think that something's going on behind the scenes, and Belichick doesn't ever care about drama. And for those who don't believe me, go watch the Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix. It's pretty obvious it's the same people still in charge. So, Bob, as we're going through this here and kind of concluding this section of the draft, the pick that stood out to me that I thought was the second reach by the same team was Campbell. Middle linebacker is a position that's not heavily sought out, unless you're the Seattle Seahawks, in the first round. They easily could have traded back, which they've already done earlier in the draft, so they're not opposed to it, and still gotten the same player in the mid to late 20s.
So
that's my problem with the way Detroit overall operated their draft. Both of their guys they could have gotten much later.
So here's what I'll say to Jack Campbell. Now, you know, I was just knocking Iowa, and, you know, Iowa does produce good players at times, but we just don't see them come out all together in the first round in this, and they tend to be all linemen. But if you look at the next couple of picks after this pick, there is a lot of wide receivers, and I am almost 100% certain that the coaches and staff of Detroit were fielding phone calls, but I'm not sure that they were getting to what they wanted. And I don't think that they were getting much value in return. So as I look at this, Detroit, you know, do they need a wide receiver? They could benefit from one with Jameson Williams being found out for gambling or something like that, and he's out 6 more games. So, you know, you're already kind of in a deficit there. But the thing that I like about that pick, you're right. I think it was the wrong.
I think he's a great player. It's just position value is my problem.
Position value is always an issue, but I think I'm thinking here that Detroit tried to trade out. Nobody wanted to bite, and so they took the guy that they were going to take anyway, regardless of when it was going to happen, because they wanted him. I mean, they're going to be picking in the second round in like 3 more picks. The guy's phenomenal. I think, despite us knocking the time that Detroit, and this is kind of how I like to think of my fantasy draft sometimes, is I know I'm not going to get a pick until X. So I'm going to try to say who's going to be there when I come back. Sometimes it works out for me. Sometimes it doesn't. But I think Detroit approached this in the same way. They got 2 gritty guys, 2 guys that fit their philosophy. And I think we're going to look back on this and say, yeah, Detroit, you could have taken another guy. You could have done better and got this guy a little bit later. But I think when push comes to shove, that we're going to see from Detroit that these 2 guys are going to be contributors day one, and these 2 guys are, and this guy in Campbell, he's going to be maybe not day 1 starter, but he's definitely going to go, and he's not coming out. Whereas Alex Anzalone will come out occasionally on like third down sometimes. This guy's not coming out of the game. Once he's in, he's in.
Potentially.
Once
coverage skills we've lacked much to be desired. So the thing with Detroit.
Listen, I'm gonna get to that right now. Yes, his coverage skills does need something, but one of the biggest lacking things in Detroit last year was their ability to stop the run. And to have a linebacker who can command the field, be on the field, potentially be a green dot, and stop the run is an asset in a division that has a lot of good rushers in it. But also, we're looking at now when Detroit pivots into this next round, and I know I'm talking up Detroit a lot, but when Detroit pivots into this next round, this is when they could potentially go look for a corner. And we can't forget, they got C.J. Gardner-Johnson as well. So the idea is to pressure, give run support so that the guys that they now have in the back can do their job. And I think to Detroit, I think we could be looking at this 2 years, 3 years down the line and saying this was a really good draft for Detroit, at least right now.
You know, that's a good point. I mean, obviously in the moment you get upset about position value and all that fun stuff. But we know at least a third, if not half of these first rounders are going to be a bust. And when we look at the two guys Detroit got, Gibbs, the running back, Campbell, the middle linebacker, they're two of the safest. You know, they will still be operating in the league 6 years from now, barring injury. And when you look at it like that and saying, you know, you got two successful picks, you're ahead. This is part of why I'm a big believer in taking a high floor guy instead of a high potential guy. And this is why when we look at this group, I think Gonzalez is a great pick for New Orleans, or for New England, rather. He is going to still be in the league and still be successful. And
that's why Jones is great for the Steelers.
Well, I don't know that with Jones. Jones is a potential guy. Jones is not a high floor guy. There's possibility for bust there. Same with the quarterbacks that we went through in the first draft. Both Houston, or of course, both Tennessee, and I said it right the first time I corrected myself. Both Houston and the Colts, there's no guarantee that's going to work.
Yeah.
But when we go through the draft so far, there's a couple people, even though they're not the sexy positions, both these running backs are going to be successful. Knowledge, unless barring injury, it's going to work. Anderson, Javon Carter, going to work. Now, there's a lot of guys that we're going to go through here in the second half of the first round that you don't exactly do know, but you do know that Detroit did not fumble this draft, even if they're going to get grades of C's and C pluses, because they reached. But when we look back, they're going to be surrounded by busts, and they avoided the minefields. So in that regards, you can't really bury them for having a long-term asset, which is what the first round's supposed to give you. Opposed to the teams we'll discuss in next year's opposed to the teams we'll be talking about tomorrow. I'm just fumbling the second half of this talk about. That is the number one guarantee this kid will bust in the entire first round. We'll be discussing tomorrow. So see you guys tomorrow, team players.